The medics did not force him to go to work, but he was not getting any better. Father Arseny once again patiently nursed him, fed him, and with his support, Sazikov finally got better. Sazikov tried to give Father Arseny some money for this, but Father Arseny answered with a smile, saying, "I'm not helping you for money, I'm doing it for you, the person, for yourself." Sazikov's feeling towards Father Arseny became warmer. He told Father Arseny about his life, and once he said, "I don't trust people in general. I believe priests even less, but you, Pyotr Andreevich, I trust. I know you won't turn your back on me. You live in your God. You do good not for your own benefit, but for the sake of others. My mother was like that," he said this and left. Stop this. The weather outside was ferocious. Many prisoners froze to death and many new prisoners arrived to work in their stead. It was a difficult time for everybody, but the political prisoners had it worst of all. For 2 days in a row, their rations were stolen by the prisoners who were criminals. That night after roll call and the locking of the barracks, a large fight erupted between the two factions over these rations. Avsenkov took the leadership of the politicals. The criminals were headed by Ivan the Brown. He was a hardened criminal, a good-for-nothing, and a murderer many times over. In camp he had also killed more than once. He liked card games in which the one who lost paid with his life. The battle that evening was over the rations which the criminals had taken laughingly. They said that they were used to taking what did not belong to them. The camp administrators, for reasons of personal safety, were always on the side of the criminals. The fight started with fists and then logs, then knives appeared in the hands of the criminals. Knives were, of course, forbidden. The guards searched for them but never seemed to find them. One of the prisoners, a soldier, was cut up. Several politicals had their heads cracked. The criminals knew how to work together. Most of the politicals could only shout and were afraid to help their own. The criminals were cruel. They were winning over the politicals. Blood was flowing. Father Arseny ran to Sazikov and begged him, "Help, please help Ivan Alexandrovich. They are cutting people up. There is blood everywhere. I ask you in the name of God to stop this. The criminals will listen to you." Sazikov only laughed and said, "Sure, they will listen to me, but why don't you help with your God? Ivan the Brown has already killed 2 of your friends, and now he is going to kill Avsenkov. Your God seems not to notice this." Father Arseny looked all around him. He saw blood on people. He heard screams, swearing and moans, and his soul was full of pain for their suffering. He lifted his arms, went into the very midst of the heated fight, and said in a clear and loud voice, "In the name of God, I order you, stop this." He blessed him with the sign of the cross and said in a whisper, "Now help the wounded," and he headed for his bunk. There he stood, as if in a different world, as if surrounded by light. He stood there, having receded into himself, praying. He did not hear the dead being carried to the door, nor did he see the wounded being helped. He stood, his attention focused on prayer. All was quiet in the barracks now. You could only hear people getting into their bunks and the moaning of a seriously wounded man. Sazikov came near Father Arseny and said, "Forgive me, Father Arseny, I doubted your God. I see now that he exists. It even scares me. Great power is given to one who believes in him. Even I am frightened. Forgive me for making fun of you." In 2 days, Avsenkov came to Father Arseny after work and said, "Thank you, you saved my life. You believe in God unconditionally, and looking at you, I'm also beginning to understand that he exists." Life plodded along. Prisoners came and worked, then were buried in the frozen ground. Others came to replace them, and the cycle started over. There was no more stealing of rations. If some criminals forgot this new way of life and did steal, the others taught them a hard lesson. Father Arseny worked as usual beyond his own strength, but he was never discouraged. In the barracks in which Father Arseny lived, many people from different backgrounds were thrown together to die. This situation caused much friction between different groups, and Father Arseny served as a buffer for the pain and suffering of all the factions involved. With a warm and kind word, he knew how to comfort their souls. A person could be a believer, a communist, a criminal, or any other kind of prisoner. Father Arseny always found the right words for each individual. These words went deep into one's soul and helped him live, gave him hope for the future, and often helped him become a better person. In some strange way, Sazikov and Avsenkov became closer. What could a criminal and a communist idealist have in common? They were somehow invisibly united by Father Arseny. A summons to the major. The supervisor had become frequently to stop in and make a fuss about every little detail as Father Arseny cleaned the empty barracks and tended to the stoves. One day he was especially fierce. He hit Father Arseny in the face, swore filthily, and tried to scare him. That evening Father Arseny received a summons to appear before the major. Everyone knows that to be summoned at night is a bad sign. There was a word that a new major had been named as chief of the special camp. This caused fear in all the prisoners. A call to the special sector was not a good thing. It usually meant that the camp officers would try to make you admit to something, or they would try to make you a secret co-worker, a sort of internal spy. If you said no, they would beat you savagely. Beatings occurred during interrogations too. The only time they did not beat you was when they called you to announce the decision to extend your sentence. The prisoners feared the special sector. Some 25 people worked there. Many of these workers in the special sector drank heavily. They knew how to interrogate. They knew how to beat. You will admit to everything, they would say. Father Arseny was met by a young lieutenant. It all started as usual, name, patronymic, last name, what are you accused of, as well as screams of, we know everything. Threats followed, and then one would always hear, now admit you were spreading propaganda in the camp. Father Arseny answered all the usual questions and was silent. He started to pray. The lieutenant swore, bet the table with his fist, threatened, and then rose, saying, we'll take you to the major. You will talk. And cursing, he left. In about 10 minutes he came back and led Father Arseny to the major, the chief of the special sector. Father Arseny, knowing the rules of the camp, understood that this was bad. Leave us, said the major, taking Father Arseny's file. The lieutenant left. The major got up, closed the door tightly, returned to his desk, sat down, and started reading the file. Father Arseny stood and prayed, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. The major finished going through the file and said in a plain, pleasant voice, sit down, Pyotr Androvich, I am the one who called you in here. Father Arseny sat down, silently repeating, Lord, have mercy on me, I put my trust in you. And he thought, it will start now. The major looked again in Father Arseny's file, checked the photograph, unbuttoned his jacket pocket, and took out a small piece of paper. He gave it to Father Arseny, saying, this is for you from Vera Danilovna. She is alive and in good health. Read it. Dear Father Arseny, it read, God's mercy is endless. He kept you alive. Be afraid of nothing. Trust. Keep praying for us sinners. Keep praying sick for us sinners. The praying the praying here is spelled Preying. You'll understand why in a second. End of the aside. God has preserved many of us. Pray for us. Vera. This letter startled him. Vera was a nun and his closest spiritual child. It was Vera's handwriting. There could be no doubt that she was the one who had written all of this. He knew it because the two of them had agreed together if they were to be able to write, They had to make a spelling mistake in the word praying. Lord, I thank you for your gift of letting me know how my children are. I thank you for your mercy. The Major then took the letter from Father Arseny's hands and burned it. They were both silent. Father Arseny was stunned and extremely moved. He could not understand what was happening. The Major was silent because he understood the state of shock which Father Arseny was in. He looked at the person in front of him, an old man with a thin beard, a shaved head, wearing an old, heavily patched cotton jacket and torn quilted trousers. Having started Father Arseny's file, the Major knew that this was a serious case. The prisoner's family included a famous scientist. He himself had graduated from Moscow University and had become known in the Soviet Union and abroad as a brilliant art historian. He was the author of renowned studies on ancient Russian art and architecture and was now a hieromonk. He was the leader of a large and strong religious community that had not dispersed, as the authorities had hoped, even after Father Arseny had been arrested. This same old man who stood before him way back when he had lived in the free world had known how to combine deep faith and a serious scientific mind. In his books he spoke about the beauty of his homeland and asked his readers to love it. Now the Major saw that all this had died in the man sitting before him. He had been trampled on and was broken. Death was upon him. Only the begging of his wife, whom the Major loved unconditionally and whom he always heeded, and the request of Vera Danilovna, who had been of great help to his wife and daughter in the past, had led the Major to this dangerous act of passing on a letter to a prisoner. Vera Danilovna was a doctor, and it so happened that the lives of several of the people closest to the Major had been saved by her care and devotion. In a camp where all watched each other in the hope they could inform on someone to the administration, it was extremely dangerous for the Major to do what he had done. But there was yet another reason why he wanted to make contact with Father Arseny in this camp. Father Arseny was praying with such intensity that he seemed separated from the world around him, but suddenly he looked up at the Major and calmly said, "I thank you for bringing me this letter. I thank you in the name of the Lord." The Major looked into the eyes of Father Arseny, and he understood that he had in front of him not an old and decrepit man, but an extraordinary person whom the years spent in this camp had not broken. On the contrary, they had strengthened the power of his spirit. For the eyes of Father Arseny shone with a light and a power the Major had never seen before, and in this strength and this light you could see the infinite kindness and a deep knowledge of the human soul. The Major sensed that Father Arseny had only to look at someone or say something and it would be done. Father Arseny's eyes could see the innermost reaches of a person's soul and read his thoughts. His faith had a power over others and it seemed to radiate visibly from him. The Major understood that this man was not going to ask him why he, the newly assigned chief of this special camp, had dared to pass him the note. Father Arseny was looking at something above, and just past the Major he stood up, made the sign of the cross several times, and bowed to someone. Seeing him, the Major stood up too, for before him at that moment stood not an old man in a patched-up vest and torn pants, but a fully vested priest who was performing the sacrament of prayer to God. The Major shrugged at this unexpected and incomprehensible event, and he recalled something he had long forgotten. He remembered the time when his mother used to take him as a little boy to the small wooden country church to pray on the great feast days. A feeling that was at once gentle and kind seized his soul. Father Arseny sat down, and again the Major saw in front of him an exhausted old man, but one whose eyes still radiated light. The Major spoke. "Pyotr Andreevich, they sent me to work here. I found out you were here. I was in Moscow and told Vera Danilovna and undertook to bring this message to you. I also wanted to ask you to help a man who lives in your barracks. And the Major stopped short. I understand, of course I will help Alexander Pavlovich Avsenkov. I will pass on to him what you asked me to do. I understand it is difficult for you here, Sergei Petrovich. You are not used to this new work of yours. It is extremely difficult to get used to this life. So many awful things happen here, but be as merciful as you can be, and that in itself will be a help to the prisoners." Yes, it is difficult everywhere now. This is why I ended up here. Petrovich. My heart bleeds when I see what is happening around me. People are followed. They denounce each other. Secret instructions are given that contradict one another. I do what I can, but it's almost worthless. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I'm afraid for myself. The supervisor, Pupkov, keeps sending reports about you. He obviously does not like you. We will replace him with somebody more decent. It's hard for you, Pyotr Andreevich. I cannot help you much, as I said, but I plan to try. I will be sending for you through Markov, the one who just interrogated you. He is a difficult man, always suspicious. That is why I will ask him to keep a special watch on you, and after your interrogations to bring you to me. Do not worry, this special surveillance will not be written into your file. Do tell Alexander Pavlovich that General Abrosimov has been demoted to the rank of major. Many people in high places still remember Alexander Pavlovich Avsenkov, but it is extremely difficult to help him. Several went to Stalin to request his release, but he only says, let him stay in camp for a while. Meanwhile, the man who got Avsenkov's post is trying to get rid of him for good in order to keep the position for himself. Alexander Pavlovich knows a great deal. He's a true idealist and he is straightforward. This kind of person is disliked in the ranks. They want him shot, but Stalin has not given the final order, so Stalin's subordinates are trying to get rid of him unofficially through the camp criminals. It is rumored that Ivan the Brown has been asked to get rid of him somehow. Please give Alexander Pavlovich this note from his wife. This will give him moral support. Help him. Tell him to beware of Savushkin. He is trying to invent accusations against him. He also lives in your barracks. Well, now you have to sign the record of our interview. I'm going to write it at our next meeting. Father Arseny signed a blank piece of paper and said, write in it what you must. The major stood up and walked to Father Arseny and taking him by the shoulder said, please remember me. Filled with impressions and emotions and unceasingly praising God, Father Arseny went back to his barracks and lay down on his bunk, tired from all he had just experienced. All the prisoners in the barracks breathed a sigh of relief. It had seemed likely that Father Arseny would never return. Lying down, he prayed prayers and psalms, thanking God and repeating, Lord, I praise your deeds. I thank you for having shown me your mercy. Have mercy on me, Lord. There is an unwritten rule in the camp. After somebody has been interrogated, you do not approach him. You ask nothing. The person will tell if he wants. If you do ask, your fellow inmates might get suspicious of you. They might think you're worried that your name came up in the interrogation. Father Arseny did not sleep that night. He was rejoicing in the mercy of God. Father Arseny glorified him and prayed to the Mother of God. In the morning he got up and started his daily work with a light heart. That morning, Pupkov dropped in on the barracks, looked around and said, Soap Pop, they didn't finish you off yesterday. They will. And laughing, he left. In the evening, when the prisoners came home, Father Arseny said to Avsenkov, I cannot split these logs alone. They won't be done in time. Please help me. There was about half an hour left before the roll call. The searchlights were already running back and forth along the ground. The sky was turning black, and Father Arseny told Avsenkov, I will pass the logs on to you. Meanwhile, take this note, read it, and swallow it. I will tell you everything later. Stunned, Avsenkov asked, what note? Father Arseny slipped him the note the major had given him. Avsenkov snatched it and started splitting logs with the wooden wedge. Then, as if he was checking a log under the light, he started reading the note. He read it once, twice, and tears started running down his face. Father Arseny whispered, now swallow the note and try to control yourself.